Welcoming everyone to a live preview show on the Hawks Eye. And today I get Dan Vians from Seahawks Forever to join me on this preview of the Titans-Seahawks matchup. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing good, and I'm proud of you, man. Going metal on the intro, and I didn't even know. I'm wearing the Rock shirt. Corbin Smith would be proud of you, too.
I know. I feel it just fits. It fits the Seattle team in a way, the mantra behind these guys, the dark side and all the things they're kind of leaning into now on the defensive side. I don't know. It seems to fit. So for all of our viewers out there, everyone that's tuned into the show, me and Dan are going to break down this matchup with the Tennessee Titans. We'll take your comments and your questions towards the end. So flood the comment section there. Outside of that, if you haven't already, and you're one of those people that loves to watch these shows but just hasn't subscribed yet, doesn't cost you anything. Sub up to Seahawks Forever and Dan stuff. Go check out his northwestforever.com. That's a great Patreon setup that Dan's got on website. Dan's got going on over there. And sub up to the Hawks Eye. Help us out. Help me out. Help get the algorithm and get our content out there more. So before we get into this conversation, we'll be back right after this. All right, now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into this right off the right off the start, Dan, I should say. Seattle's kind of got an opportunity to reset the button here after that, week 11 loss to the Rams, going in against a team in Tennessee that's basically kind of, I think, not that they failed to meet expectations this year, but the bottom's kind of come out on that ship, and number one draft pick look like they may have it again potentially. What are your thoughts overall of the Seahawks going into this Week 12 matchup?
Well, it's funny. I'm trying to talk myself into being nervous about this game, that it could be a bit of a trap because Carolina's played some good teams actually pretty close this year if you look at their results. But the bottom, did I say Carolina? I meant Tennessee. The bottom line is this should be an easy win for the Seahawks. And I say that having said a million times, if you've ever watched me before, that there's really no such thing in the NFL. But that's where we are with this matchup. It's not just a talent deficiency. Like, you can argue that Tennessee has the worst roster in the NFL. Like, Vegas might be right there with them, but it might not even be close as to who else has as bad a roster as they do, especially on offense right now. And if you look at all the metrics, you try to find a way that the Titans can beat the Seahawks this week, and it's really hard to do, to even talk yourself into it. That being said, it's kind of the perfect way for the Seahawks to bounce back from what happened last week and get some things right and work on some of the things that they've struggled with, not just last week, but going back 4 or 5 weeks. We're going to talk about turnovers here tonight. And most of all, to get the quarterback kind of a soft landing, right? And give him a chance to bounce back from Sunday, get his confidence back. Not that I'm really worried about his confidence. I think we saw in those last 2 drives in Los Angeles how he's able to bounce back from those mistakes. But in the grand scheme of things, to be able to face a team like this on the road, which they've done very well, that loss in Los Angeles, I think, broke a 10-game winning streak on the road in what looks to be a beautiful, sunny, 60-ish degree day in Nashville, Tennessee. It should be a perfect opportunity for them to come out and kind of work on some of the things they need to coming off that loss.
Yeah, and I've tried to do the same thing, talk myself into, okay, Seattle's got to really like buckle down. Like they've had kind of this misstep versus the Rams, and now they're playing Tennessee, and this is an opportunity for them to possibly slip twice because they may overlook this and start looking at the Falcons and the Vikings and the Colts in their next matchup versus the Rams. But something about the way Mike Macdonald has this team so focused after a loss, whether it was the early week 1 loss to the 49ers or the loss to Tampa Bay, they come out and you look at what happened to Jacksonville. Jacksonville was kind of high and flying high after that, week prior when we lost to Tampa Bay, and we came out and our defense set a tone right off the bat. And I think that's kind of what's going to have to happen in this game. I think the defense is going to have to set the tone of how this is going to go for Cam Ward and this young offense. And the Seahawks offense has to kind of start finding their way. Because this stretch run here that's coming up, they've got to find a way to stay true to who they are and not necessarily deviate from that when things don't go right. And the biggest start to that is going to be don't turn over the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, so, absolutely. That's why I mentioned it, because it wasn't just an issue on Sunday. It was more pronounced on Sunday. 4 interceptions is extreme. It's only happened, I did some research the other day, over the last 10 years. It's only happened 55 times in the regular season and the playoffs that a quarterback has thrown 4 interceptions, and only 4 of those have resulted in wins. So it's usually a pretty bad barometer of how your team's doing. But there were the 3 games before that where there were turnovers, fumbles, lost, and interceptions. But because they played so well overall and won pretty easily in all 3 of those matchups, it was easy to dismiss those things, right? Oh, it's game script. They're not going to be as sharp. Obviously, Sundays stood out more like a sore thumb and needs to be corrected.
Yeah, so let's dive into this, Seattle offense, time to get right kind of thing. This is an opportunity for this team with how bad this Titans defense has been. And yes, they have some very good players, Simmons being one of them that is on that roster. And, again, if Gray Zabel can't go, I think that's going to really test Anthony Bradford, Christian Haynes, who, Mike's already kind of come out and said will start if Gray can't go. And Olu, it's going to give them an immediate test of how well they can work together, and one of the ways I think Seattle needs to do that is by running the ball down. They got to start being, not that they're not committed to it, but they need to be able to stay consistent with what they're getting out of the run game is the best way I would put it. So, what's the number one thing for you that Seattle's offense must fix in this game outside of turnovers?
That's it. I was going to say the same thing. I mean, and that would have been the case whether and it will be the case whether Gray Zabel's out there on Sunday or not. And I'll just say this. I think given what we've seen from this team, how they've made some of these decisions this season when they face an opponent that they should be able to beat at less than full strength, I really don't think we're going to see Gray Zabel out there on Sunday. If there's any chance of re-aggravating that left knee, I think it'd be irresponsible to put him out there. And plus, I kind of want to see how Christian Haynes is going to perform, to be honest. Now, it gets a little scary because the guy that I featured twice in my thumbnail for this, Jeffrey Simmons, one of the best in the business, and he's certainly going to test those guys. But it doesn't matter. The opponent doesn't matter right now. They have to get better at running the football. It's why I think they struggled so much against the Rams in the red zone. And I think it's why Mike Macdonald chose to be so conservative on 4th downs in that game, because you have to be able to convert some of those running the football, and they just don't trust it yet.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I found interesting, coming out of this game was Mike and saying that, hey, we need to get K9. K9 has earned the opportunity to get more touches. I think I wonder partly, and it's just me, but I wonder if Mike's kind of done with the even 50-50 almost timeshare that we have seen from these running backs and going, okay, we need to figure out who's going to be this, the 75-25 or the 60-40 guy that we can give 60% of the carries to, because this going back and forth, as much as we talk about the O-line and the struggles that are present there, in a zone scheme, a lot of it is about your running back understanding how your O-line moves and the timing that is in with that group.
Yeah.
And if you keep switching your backs every other drive, it can kind of mess with that. And I think maybe Mike might think that has kind of stonewalled the growth potential of this run game.
Well, and you've shared some numbers with me too, and we've talked about it a few times over the last couple of weeks about some of their tendencies when Zach Charbonnet is the lead back versus Kenneth Walker. And while they're not black and white, there's enough of a trend there that I think it makes it a little easier for teams to plan for how to defend us depending on who's on the field. And so, ironically, I just had Greg Bell on the show this week, and he talked at length and wrote about it in Tacoma News Tribune about how, and Mike Macdonald made comments earlier this week that can be interpreted as that pendulum is going to shift a little bit more towards Kenneth Walker now. It's going to be less of a timeshare. He's going to be more of the lead back. That foot injury that really has lingered since January when he hurt his ankle last year is finally behind him. And they're going to lean on this guy. He might have only 7 games left in his contract. Like, now we're not as concerned about preserving him. This is what we were preserving him for. This is the stretch that we had been managing his practice load all the way back to training camp for exactly this. And then ironically, he shows up on the injury report today with a glute injury, although in his press conference today, Mike Macdonald says they're just taking care of him. It doesn't sound like that serious of a thing. I do think we're going to see Kenneth Walker look more like an RB1 starting Sunday. And I think that's the right move. They need to do that. The things we thought Zach Charbonnet could be, he just doesn't have the burst and the juice that Kenneth Walker does, or that I think even if Kenneth Walker was not available on Sunday, that they need their RB1 to have to really make this offense hum.
And just here's some numbers out there. So the AVT percentage of the two backs this year through the entirety of the season, which is avoid tackle rate. So the percentage of the time the runner avoids potential tackles, K9's at 36%, Kenneth Walker's at 21.9. That's a substantial difference. And then when you go to efficiency, so explosive run rate, so the percentage of a player's total rushing attempts that turn into explosive runs, K9's at 14, Charbonnet's at 3.8%.
No.
I think there is starting to become, and like, I know there's, people are going to say, oh, well, look, Charbonnet's running at a goal line a bunch. And I 100% understand that. But when he is getting his more open field carries, Charbonnet isn't having, I think, the same success. And I think that's maybe what's even leading to it. And you saw it in this Rams game is K9 started to find his track a little bit better behind this O-line. He started to hit some of those creases and those opportunities. And you started to see his explosive ability take shape.
Let me tell you a little secret, something that I've decided in the last couple of weeks. I think Zach Charbonnet is not on this roster in 2026. Whether or not Kenneth Walker is or not, I just don't think he's a good enough fit. But I think there's some value and some equity potentially there where a gap scheme type team might really be interested in a guy like Zach Charbonnet on a rookie deal. I think you can get something for him, especially now that the Seahawks only have 4 picks in the draft.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you, Dan. I think there's a very strong possibility that Charbonnet isn't, and that you could fill Charbonnet's role with a bruiser back that you're looking for to be your short yardage. Or here's another thought. What happens if Robbie Utes turns
Tyler Algier?
Tyler Algier. Oh,
Just
that's an interesting name.
Saying. He's a free agent. Anyway, yeah. Robbie Utes.
That's another potential thing, right? So outside of that, Dan, if you're Clint Kubiak, I'm put you in the offensive coordinator chair because you love to put me in that also often. Which matchup are you going to exploit first if you're Clint Kubiak in this game matchup on Sunday?
Well, the easy thing to say would be that let's get to the quick game, right? Let's get Sam dialed back in and get some rhythm. I do think that they're going to do that, but I think they're going to try to get back to explosive plays. I think that's something that was lacking on Sunday for a bunch of reasons. And it's still, as much as we want to talk about ball control, we want to talk about running the football, we want to talk about getting the quick game. Sam has talked a lot this week about getting rid of the ball quicker. That doesn't mean they're going to scrap that aspect of the offense. I think it's a really important element of this offense. And they're going to want to get back there. And this is a good opponent to do it against. They can get after the passer a little bit. They're about middle of the pack in a lot of defensive metrics, even after trading away former Seahawk Draymond Jones at the deadline. Like, they've got some guys that can rush the passer a little bit, especially with Jeffrey Simmons back. But I think that's something they're still going to want to get to. They're never going to get away from that. It's going to look more balanced, but I think they're still going to look to exploit that. And that means JSN. And I also think, and JSN's in line to set a bunch of records this week, by the way, I think they want to get Rashid Shaheed incorporated in this offense and get him going. And so maybe that's a roundabout way for me to answer it that way. I'd like to see him get 6, 7, 8 targets in this game and really start to get him just get him comfortable, and also put it on tape for Brian Flores and the Vikings defense next week, because they're pretty darn good. And then the Colts and the Rams.
That's one thing for me for sure, is I want to see Shaheed become more of a receiving threat down the field. Like, you bring this guy in for what he is. And the one time you did actually unleash him down the field, a slight underthrown or thrown ball inside by Sam instead of putting it outside, which I think, again, is just them not having a massive amount of reps together yet to understand speed and where guys are going to be. It could have been a touchdown. And so I think you're going to see more of that, because at the current point, it's like he's the gadget guy. And yes, I get that's to me, that's an added bonus of Shaheed's game. I don't want that to be the staple of Shaheed's game, is you're the gadget receiver. And the other guy, I think that
has he had as many carries as catches? It's probably close.
It's probably close. And so I think the interesting fact too in this game of Seattle's offense versus this defense, and actually someone brought it up in our chat. Coach Derek from All 22 Films is hanging out in our chat right now. Which is awesome.
What's up, Coach?
And he brings up a really good point, is that Denard Wilson coached with Mike in 2023 in Baltimore. And so that will be an interesting dynamic in this game and matchup. 100%. And I think this is where Mike's expertise of understanding, and Kubiak going up against this defense and some of these things, he should have an opportunity to take advantage of it, because he sees it all the time. So you should have some built-in checks and different things. And not to say that Wilson's going to have all the same things that Mike does, but there's going to be a lot of similarities in ways they, drop to coverage, in ways they bring certain pressures that hopefully Seattle can kind of take advantage of and, exploit. Here's an interesting part, Dan. I'm going to ask you this. Do you expect Seattle on their opening drive to be aggressive, or do you think they were going to try and build this run game?
Yes. I mean, I think both of those things. The one thing I admire about Clint Kubiak actually is he doesn't. We'll never forget. Was it 2018, the Dallas wild card game, right?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Where Pete was so upset that Brian Schottenheimer wasn't establishing the run to the level that he would like with Chris Carson, that they went too far the other way. And they ran the football to a fault in that game and kind of hamstrung and handcuffed Russell Wilson, even though when he did throw, he was really effective in that game. And I think it cost us the game. I don't think we're going to see that kind of overreaction. Yeah, I do expect it to be more balanced. You remember at halftime last week, when they ask each head coach a couple of things, they go down to the sideline reporter, and what Mike Macdonald said was we need to get back to who we are on offense and establishing balance in the run, and then they come out and they throw it on 2 of their first 3 plays of the second half, including a deep shot to JSN, and Sam gets picked. It was contradictory. So I do think you're going to see that, but they're still going to look for their shots. And I do think they'll try to take one to Shaheed early. I would expect that on the first drive or 2. And I think it's a great point that Derek brings up, and I'm glad he did, because I feel like it's the storyline no one's talked about this week, unless I missed it. Mike Macdonald,
I haven't heard it.
Mike Macdonald brought it up himself yesterday at his press conference when somebody asked him about how he was going to attack their defense or something, and he said, "Yeah, I'm just going to tell Denard what we're going to do." He was kind of making a joke out of it. No one even followed up on it and said, "Yeah, what's it like?" We're talking mentor and apprentice here, right? And no one's talking about that storyline. We've talked so much this year about how Clint Kubiak has faced teams that know what he's going to do on offense, and that maybe that's kind of played with his head a little bit when it comes to strategizing. But in this case, this is a chance for them to face a defensive scheme now that they run every day. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, and that's kind of what I want to go to on, the next topic here on this matchup is the Titans offense versus McDonald's defense. And Coach Derek brought up a great point, because how much better does this set up Cam Ward to understand where there are going to be holes? And I get he's a rookie quarterback, and I understand that aspect of this. But going against someone that's going to be able to explain a lot of the back end work, because remember, Wilson for Mike Macdonald was a DB coach. So he's going to be able to explain these coverages. I'm not saying it's going to make a massive difference to Cam Ward, but it may allow him to get some maybe more anticipation-based throws completed than he maybe wouldn't, since he doesn't have such a familiar background with it.
To that, I would say, and it would be great for Derek to chime in and just tell me if I'm full of crap or not. My understanding is that, and this is the beauty really of this scheme that Mike Macdonald adapted and helped create, is it just doesn't really have tendencies. It's not predictable. You don't know what they're going to do. So you can't just plan. You can't just teach Cam Ward like, hey, if you see Ernest Jones doing this guy's coming, because that's not how they operate. The whole point of this defense is so that you don't know. We've seen this team play a lot of zone on the back end. And then against Arizona 2 weeks ago, they pressed Marvin Harrison Jr. almost exclusively. That's something new. That's something we haven't seen. Against the Rams, we saw times where they did play quite a bit of man-to-man. Greg Olsen pointed it out on the broadcast. And yet when you looked at the numbers at the end of the game, the percentages ended up kind of similar to what it usually is. So you just don't know. And at the end of the day, how much does it matter if your offensive line isn't capable of blocking us when we rush 4? And I think this is a game where they're going to be able to do that. I don't think you're going to see Mike Macdonald get very deep into his call sheet in this game unless he has to, unless something happens and the Titans keep it close, which they did against the Texans in their last game, surprisingly so. It was a really ugly game, and they just hung around, and then they put a 92-yard drive together at the very end to get close and have a shot at this one. I just don't know how the Titans are going to score. I don't see it.
The interesting fact about this, and this is what I'm going to be interested in, is the two games, the LA and the San Francisco game. There's one common coverage, thing that's come up is it was the two highest games of Seattle's defense playing zone coverage and their two lowest games of playing man coverage. Seattle's kind of roughly been around a 20 to, 30 to 20% man team to a 70 and 80% zone team. And so that's where it's going to be interesting to see what Mike does to mess with this. Because, again, they're going to be without their two top receivers. Ridley's out and
Manor is out now.
Yeah, so you're down those two right off the bat.
Yep.
I think the key to this game on Seattle's defense side is going to be what kind of pressure they bring on Cam Ward. How does that rotation look? What does that look like? And I think that's going to be where we see Mike maybe have a little bit of an upper hand in that regard, dealing with, someone that does understand how he coaches, what he likes to call, but how he can kind of utilize that to his advantage are the rotation that he has going. And so, if you had to pick one player in this game, Dan, from the Seahawks defense, who do you think has the highest chance of dominating their matchup?
Ooh, you talking about on the outside or just anywhere?
Anywhere on that. Who do you think is going to have the most dominant and impactful matchup in this game?
I feel like we've seen flashes and hints, but we haven't seen that game yet from Nick Emenwari. You remember the game that Devin Witherspoon had on Monday Night Football? Was it against the Giants his rookie year, right? In week 3, I think it was, where he had the pick 6 and he had a sack. He was everywhere. That was kind of his coming out game. I feel like Emenwari, first of all, I feel like just generally, this is the game when the turnover tide starts to shift. As good as the Seahawks defense has been, they're not taking the ball away. They got the punch out last week on Puka. That was a great play, and it was nice to see. They're not really intercepting passes. This feels like that type of game, even though Ward's only thrown 6. But he's been absolutely terrible against the pressure. So in just regular passer rating of quarterbacks that have a minimum of 150 dropbacks, he's 33rd in the league in passer rating and there's 32 teams, right? So do the math. When facing pressure, his rating, and I think his rating there is about 72.8, 73. His rating against pressure is 54 point something, 54.6, I think. So the fact that the Seahawks get as much pressure as they do, only rushing 4, there's a great opportunity, I think, to play more coverage on the back end. And I just feel like they're going to do some cool things with them and Worry given what you talked about, there's no weapons on that Tennessee offense at all. They can't run the ball. They're 32nd in the league. They're 30th in throwing. Tony Pollard really hasn't done much for them. They're going to shut the run down. I feel like Nick Emenwari's going to come up with a couple of big plays. So I'm going to say he's going to have at least a pick and a sack in this game.
Yeah, if I got to pick somebody I think's going to dominate their matchup, I don't know. I've got this weird feeling Devin Witherspoon might all of a sudden kind of have a reemergence game where he's got a couple pass breakups, maybe finds the ball and gets an interception. Like, I think he's finally starting to get his legs back underneath him a little bit. You saw a little bit of that aggressiveness come back out in the Rams game where he took the penalty that shouldn't have been a penalty and was one of the most ridiculous UR calls I've seen in a very long time.
How bad was that?
But those are some of the things. And, he was just all over Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams just could not shake Devin Witherspoon most of that game. And I don't know. I just got a feeling with the limited, receivers, and as we know from watching college football, Cam Ward is a bit of a gambler. He likes to still try and thread that needle. I think there's an opportunity for either Emenwari or Witherspoon to kind of have that opportunity to get that hand on the ball and create something. So
it'd be really cool to see, because one of the most mind-boggling stats is that pick six against the Giants his rookie year is the only interception he's ever had in his career. Like that tide is going to turn. And I think playing in the outside more, he's going to have more opportunities.
I agree. So the last thing I'll ask you about this, Dan, before we move off of this one is, what can Tennessee realistically do to stay competitive in this game?
Oh, outside of the obvious, which would be, forced turnovers. I think Cam would have to hit some big plays. And they'd have to just catch them in a couple of coverage things and hit a couple of deep balls to maybe the rookie Shamir Dyke. It's really the only way I think they can hang around in this game. He's capable of it. I mean, I'm a WSU grad. I love Cam Ward, and I know he's taking a lot of heat this year, as most rookie quarterbacks would, especially when they're playing on a bad team. I believe in his upside. I believe in his future. I really do, depending, of course, on what they do with the coaching situation there in the offseason. That's really the only thing that I kind of worry about, is the arm is so special, and he can be scrambling around. It's another thing they need to account for. I don't know if he gets enough credit for how mobile he is and how many plays he can make with his feet. And it's the quickest release I've ever seen. I'd be interested to hear your perspective as a quarterback coach. I remember when he committed to WSU, I went back and found some Immaculate Word tape. It was like dark and grainy, and it looked like it was shot on like an old Super 8 video. But I was blown away by how quickly he gets rid of the ball. And so if you don't play to the whistle, and if you think you've got him wrapped up, he can throw it 40 yards downfield on a line into coverage and hit a guy. And that, to me, is really kind of the only cheat code that they might have.
Yeah, no, he definitely, watching him come out, I was watching, his release, how quickly he gets it out, and it's a flick. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take much for him to create enough velocity on that ball.
Everything.
Yeah. And I would agree. I just think for them to stay realistically competitive, they need to keep the ball away from Seattle's offense. They need to own the time of possession and have long drives and sustained drives and be able to get touchdowns and not just field goals. And that's the only way I can see it. Even if Cam Ward does have cheat code moments, I just don't think he can do it enough throughout the entirety of the game to really move the needle off of how I could see this game going. So,
and that is how they stayed in the game against Houston. Like he was much more of a game manager. I think he averaged 5.3 or 5.4 yards per attempt in that game. That might be how they come out and try to do things. Do you see any scenario where they can do that and move the ball enough on Seattle to score? Like, I think they're going to keep everything in front of them. They're going to play to the sticks. And I don't know. I think it would come down to third downs. I just don't see him being able to succeed with where he's at right now in his development on third downs against this Mike Macdonald defense.
No. And I think that's where Mike can kind of create even more havoc and pressure for them, is getting them in the third and long situations, winning the early downs defensively, and then just kind of toying with them and toying with this offensive line in some respects. It's not a solid group up front. There's a lot of holes and gaps in it, and that's one of the ways I think they take advantage of it. So let's kind of talk the scheme battle, like who controls the game. And so my first question for you, Dan, is what schematic wrinkle from Seattle are you going to be looking for, whether it be on offense or defense?
It's an interesting one. I would like to see, and I was glad to see he was a full participant in practice today. There were some things earlier in the week we weren't quite sure about. Since he's come back off the injured list, I'm not sure what they're doing with Robbie Utes. And I know this is a little thing, right? And so I'm picking a wrinkle that might only have limited exposure. I just really don't understand it. Like when he's on the field, it seems to me like he's rarely leading into the hole, right? In a true kind of, 21 personnel. And yet they haven't thrown it to him yet. I'll never forget the play. I know it was preseason, but a lot of the Kansas City starters were in where he ran the little option route into the flat for a big gain. With his tight end background, I thought we'd see a little more of that. I'm not quite sure why he's out there. And then we see the barnyard, right? The push that failed against the Rams, and they actually motioned him out. I don't know if they're setting the stage for later. Maybe we'll see it this week where, Barner would then pitch it. We've seen the Eagles kind of play around with some tricks now off of their tush push this year where he kind of flips it out to the side. Hurts. I'd like to see something there. Outside of that, just get the ball to the running backs more in space. I really want to see that. And you and I talked on our film breakdown this week about how that's hard to do sometimes because they're keeping those guys in maybe a little longer than other Shanahan type offenses to help out the offensive line, just to chip and give them a little extra protection. But I feel like, they're on pace for fewer catches this season combined, all the running backs, than Alvin Kamara caught last year for the Saints with Kubiak calling plays, and he missed several games due to injury. I see over the last couple of games, there's been instances of it, but I think that can be a much bigger weapon. And could there be anything better to help out Sam if he's getting pressured? If Jeffrey Simmons is having his way with Christian Haynes, than to just get the ball out to Kenneth Walker in the flat?
Yeah, and for me, the wrinkle I want to see, Dan, is I want to see them start spamming the boot action, and not like play action set in the pocket. Play action, boot it, and bring your tight end or Cooper Kupp underneath that end that you leave free on the backside and dump it to him in the flat, whether it's Arroyo, whether it's Barner, whether it's Kupp, like Shaheed even. Like, that is such a common play in the West Coast offense, in McVay's, in Shanahan's. Start spamming that on teams, because the more you stress ends on their responsibility backside, the more it then opens up your backside cutback lane on your zone runs. And that's why I feel like Seattle's cutback lane still hasn't really opened up running the ball, is because there isn't enough true boot action of Sam getting outside, making those throws consistently enough to then open that up where ends have to hesitate the minute they're left free. Am I squeezing down and collapsing hard, or do I have to wait for that quarterback to come back out the back door with the ball and chase him? So that's the one thing I'd like to see, is that wrinkle. Do you think there's anything Tennessee can scheme defensively that will stress Seattle's structure on offense?
I think they're going to try to do what Chris Shula did to him last week, right? I think we're going to see him try to use a robber and roam the middle of the field and try to take that away from Sam. And I hope they do, because I want to see how Clint Kubiak and Sam Darnold react to that.
Yeah, I could see that. I can also see them getting back up in the receivers' faces again, like the Rams did, and really try and disrupt that quick timing route. Those are some things that, to go back to one more thing with the wrinkle, it's not so much a wrinkle schematically. It's more something I want to see. I want to see Sam start getting to his second read and getting the ball there.
Yeah.
Currently, right now, during the season, 61% of his throws are going first read before he gets to a second read, which is at 7%. And then, going from there, it just gets less and less and less. Like, we've got to find a way to get Sam to, and I think that's what he got caught on. He even alluded to it a little bit in his press conference, saying, yeah, I got stuck on some reads too long.
Yeah, and we've talked about this since week one. There have been games where obviously he's looking for JSN first and foremost, but it's easy to dismiss it when it's working so well.
Yeah.
Right. But now someone hits you in the mouth and you lose a game because of it. So let's see how they adjust.
So last question, Dan, I'm going to ask on this segment before we move to the matchups, one of some key matchups we're looking at in this game. How important is going to be the early game script for Kubiak in this matchup?
Oh, I think it's wildly important. And it's something he's done really well this year. That's been one of the most refreshing things about this entire season is, how many years have we gone where the offense just week after week after week got off to slow starts? And, we had that stretch of 17 straight games, I think, going into early this season of not scoring a touchdown on our first drive. And then we kind of got spoiled because we saw week after week after week of really good early drives and that early script. I think this script is going to be written in such a way that it's not just going to be in a vacuum. What are their tendencies? What are their weaknesses? How do we pick on them? It's going to be, we need to make a statement. Maybe not necessarily to the Rams or the rest of the world, but to themselves, of what Mike Macdonald talked about coming out at halftime last week that I referenced earlier. Like, he said, we need to get back to who we are, and they didn't do it, and it cost them a game. We're going to do that on this first drive. We're going to be physical. We're going to use the fullback. We're going to run the football. We're going to take a deep shot or two, but we're going to hit you in the mouth and let you know right off the bat. I think it's really important in games like this. They're a 13.5-point favorite. Don't even give the Titans a chance to think they have the opportunity to hang around in this game. Hit them in the mouth early and go down and score a touchdown. It exercises demons from last week, get your offense believing in themselves again, and sends a message to the Titans. This is going to be a long day.
Yeah, and that's kind of, the way that I view this too is that Sam and Clint have to be on the same page with us. And that means, sometimes stick to the call, see what they do. Don't always check out of it. Like, actually go through that process. And then after that, don't just necessarily go, okay, we found the fact we got our explosive plays back, we're going to spam that. Like, no, you're going to have other kind of counters because you're going to play teams, Colts, Vikings, even though they're a bit of a oddball right now, before that Rams game, where you're going to need some counter punches. And we're going to have to see if, Clint's got enough of those to kind of actually affect the game and affect the defense to get them out of what they like to do. So it'll be interesting. But let's move on to the matchups that matter, Dan. And so matchup number one I got to ask you about is JSN versus these corners. How do you feel that's going to go? What is the biggest mismatch in this game? Because I feel like that's the one.
Well, JSN's been a mismatch against everybody. But this team in particular, I was just looking at their depth chart again, and we're talking about Darrell Baker Jr., Jalen Armour Davis. I mean, they traded away their best corner, and they've got some other guys that are hurt too. L'Jarius Sneed's on injury reserve. I think he has an opportunity to have a field day. Again, I think they're going to try to get Shaheed really involved in this game, and we'll wait and see. Torrey Horton wasn't ruled out today, was he? Or was he?
Torrey Horton was ruled out today.
Okay, was ruled out. So cool. That's fine. Let's let him heal up for another game. Get Shaheed involved early. I don't think they have anybody on their roster that can match up against JSN. Even their young safeties, like loved Xavier Woods coming out of Notre Dame. He's a guy that we talked about on a bunch of draft shows and scouted heavily. He's out in this game as well. I just don't know how they match up against him. And I think he can do just about anything he wants to do. And if he does, there's some pretty cool things that he has an opportunity to achieve this Sunday. And it'll be interesting to see if even if this game kind of gets out of hand early, if they'll maybe try to get him there. He only needs to get 75 yards. So the record last week was, okay, so it's, hold on, I want to make sure I get this right. First player in NFL history to have at least 75 receiving yards in each of their first 10 games of a season, okay? But only 2 players have ever done it 11 games in a row at any time, even over the course of one season into the next. Those 2 players are Cooper Kupp and Marvin Harrison Sr., Hall of Famer. So that's kind of a big deal. But the cool one, really, if he can get loose just a little bit, and he's only had 1 game this season over this yardage mark, and this blows my mind. He only needs 157 yards to match the all-time single season record in Seahawks history for receiving yards. 11 games in. That is unbelievable to me. Don't know if he'll get there because game script, may dictate otherwise, but it's shocking that he's there that quickly.
And just to give some preference on where JSN is in relation to everybody else on the Seahawks receiving group, JSN's sitting at 1,100 yards currently, or over 1,100 yards. I should say basically 1,150 is where he's currently at. He's only 4 yards off of it. Cooper Kupp is next with 390.
Mm-hmm.
AJ Barner at 306. Elijah Arroyo at 174. Kenneth Walker at 127. And then you have Shaheed at 30 right now.
Yeah. It's crazy. It makes you wonder if Shaheed had been here all year, maybe he might have 500-600 yards receiving.
Yeah.
But again, it's a lower volume passing offense. I mean, we saw volume on Sunday, but that really wasn't ideal. And so it's going to be, not never. You're probably not going to see 2,000-yard receivers in this offense very often, the way that Mike Macdonald wants to play the game. But it just points out how good JSN has been in that connection with Sam Darnold.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. So let's look at it this way. A couple other matchups in this game. Shaheed obviously versus the other corner, because I think Shaheed, we're going to see him more in some of those two receiver sets than maybe we saw even last week. You got Seattle's D-line versus the interior O-line of the Titans, which, in PFF blocking percentages, the Titans O-line is a bottom 5 interior pass blocking grade, which is never going to be a good matchup when you're going against Seattle's rotation. And then the last one is obviously the running backs, Charbonnet and K9 versus these, linebackers. And, the Titans have a top 3 missed tackle rate as a linebacker core. Well,
Seahawks are one of the worst tackling teams in football.
Yeah.
That's another thing I guess I could have mentioned earlier. I'd really like to see improve this week. It's one thing I was shocked to hear Greg Bell talk about, because I didn't really notice it. I wasn't paying attention to it in training camp when I was there either. It's not something that I typically watch for, but he said compared to other teams you've seen in the past, both Seahawks and other teams he's covered, they just don't work on it in practice, which was surprising to me. Maybe that's, just trying to prevent injury or whatever. They have drills that they do with the big tires and all that kind of stuff, but he said they do less work on tackling than he's ever seen a team do before. That needs to get better. I know they rely on gang tackling and guys being there to help. But yeah, that's certainly an aspect of it. And then I think the other matchup, I guess the one matchup that makes it a little tough to sleep at night is, and I'm assuming we're going to see Christian Haynes at left guard. Jeffrey Simmons is just going to live over Christian Haynes on that side, I would imagine, and try to test him as much as he can. Now he's going to test Anthony Bradford too, and he can beat him with his quickness. But I guess that's the thing that makes me a little bit nervous. That being said, we've slowed down some really, really good explosive defensive tackles this year and held them at bay. We didn't hear Braden Fisk's name at all on Sunday. They completely neutralized Walter Nolan, which, by the way, have you noticed that the other 2 games that he's played since he came back, he dominated. Mm-hmm. Seahawks basically eliminated him from that game. So, but that's a matchup that I think they can exploit.
So here's a question for you, Dan. What under the radar Seahawk could explode in this game?
I've already said Robbie Oates. Give me Elijah Arroyo. I keep waiting for the breakout game, and we've seen a couple of flashes here and there. But it's mostly on, like, he had the big scramble play against Arizona. We haven't seen a seam ball yet. We haven't seen a deep route yet. Like, get him on a mismatch, which this is a perfect team to do it against. They struggle in coverage. Get him on a mismatch, get him on a linebacker, or because you're facing a Mike Macdonald defense, there are going to be times where you can get him in a situation where they're going to have an edge player trying to keep up with him down the field, right? Kind of like we had, who was that in the Arizona game? It wasn't Baron Browning. It was always Josh Sweat, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Josh Sweat, downfield. Like, they'll do stuff like that because Mike Macdonald does stuff like that, not to that extreme, just because he's so damn good at it. But I keep waiting for that breakout, and this might be a good opportunity for that.
So I'm not going to say this guy's under the radar, because he's not under the radar, but my guy that I think could explode in this game is Derek Hall. I'm waiting for the sacks to start coming for Derek Hall.
Yeah.
He's even since coming back, he's again affecting the pocket. He's been really good in his run support. I think Derek Hall could blow up in this game and have 2 sacks. That's, something I would be kind of hoping for, looking for. So, last question here, Dan, before we get to the 3 keys is what matchup to you out of the ones I kind of talked about do you think is going to determine the pace of this game?
Oh, I think it's probably JSN on their DBs. If they're able to get back to kind of having their way to where anytime Sam needs to, he can go back to JSN. If they're stuck in a couple of 3rd and longs, which they've ironically been better at 3rd and longs than they have been at 3rd and shorts this year. If he's able to just get that confidence back to just go back to JSN anytime he needs to, I think that's game over.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the interior of Seattle's D-line versus O-line of the Titans. I think that's on the defensive side going to determine the pace. If they're in Cam Ward's face all day and just rattling him, I think you'll see some turnovers start to catapult out of that, and we'll see a Seahawks maybe run away with this game. So let's take a look at the 3 keys, Dan, to this. Number 1, win early downs on both sides of the ball for me. Seattle's got a top 8 early down defense success rate. So they're getting early success wins on those first key downs, and the Titans are a bottom 3 offense on early downs. Take advantage of that. And the flip can almost be said in the same way for the offense for Seattle. Don't get stuck in 3rd and longs. Stay ahead of the change, run the football, do things like that.
I'll take it a step further on this key. Not just early downs, but early in the game. Mike Macdonald even called himself out for it again this week, where he said, look, early in games, I'm not calling it well. It's a lack of preparation on my part. We've seen teams hit big plays early. Even the Cardinals did by hitting Trey McBride, like a lot of tight end usage early in games, screen passes, guys out in flats where maybe we're being a little over aggressive, too amped up, right? Early in a game, and teams are hitting us with that and getting some yards after the catch. So I think that would be an early indicator for me that if we're stuffing them on early downs early in the game, the first drive or 2, it's going to be a tough day for the Titans.
Agreed. So let's go to key 2 here, and that's to your point, Dan, hit the explosive pass plays. Seattle's got a top 12 explosive pass rate, and the Titans they are one of the worst teams for giving up explosive plays in the pass game this year on defense. To your point, exploit it, use it to your advantage in this one.
Yeah, I mean, you can just kind of rewind this show and go back to stuff I said earlier. Let's get a big shot or 2 to Shaheed, and let's get Arroyo down the seam.
And the last one I've got, and I think this is one you and me can both agree on, is protect the football.
I mean,
it's pretty simple.
You'd think it would be. And here's the thing. I don't feel like this team is fumble prone. I think for the most part, their running backs take care of the ball. Now, there have been times this year where I feel like receivers have gotten, tight ends and wide receivers have gotten a little loose. There have been many times this year where I'm like, ooh, careful, where they go to, take a move upfield or whatever, and they're hanging the ball out there a little bit. I get nervous. And there's been a couple of times they put the ball on the ground. AJ Barno's done it twice and not lost those fumbles. We've gotten a little bit lucky on some of those. But to me, it's just all about Sam. Nothing would please me more and maybe be a stronger indicator of how this team can bounce back from last week than if for the first time in 5 weeks, he can have a clean game and throw 0 picks. I think that would be huge.
So I was going to, you kind of got to it already, Dan, but I'll ask it anyway. Which key for you is most likely to actually get executed?
Ooh, okay. You know what? I'm gonna stick my neck out. I feel really good about how Sam's gonna bounce back. He's not gonna throw a pick this week.
Okay, I'm gonna go with the win early downs. I think the Titans are gonna struggle. They're gonna get put in a lot of 3rd downs early, and they're gonna struggle to get out of those situations and convert. And I think on the flip side, I don't think Seattle's offense will see a lot of 3rd downs in this game because I think they'll be staying on schedule and getting first downs at a rapid rate. We won't see them have a massive number of 3rd down opportunities in this game. So
I like it.
With that being said, Dan, let's get into the 12's Q&A Blitz here. We've had a lot. We got 250 of you guys watching the show and appreciate it. So let's get into a couple of these right off the start. So first one, Amy Holmes, our moderator of the chat, along with Ian Victor, but I think Amy's the only one in tonight from that group. So she goes,
Amy?
Chris Stoll is a captain this week. How did we not hear he's back? Has Chris
He's
been
a
back
long
all year?
snapper.
That too. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been back all year. He was back week 1.
Yeah.
He was banged up for the last, I think he missed the whole preseason or all the games. It's because he's a long snapper. Those guys just, you don't hear their names unless they're screwing up. So that's a good thing.
Exactly. John McGrath comes in with the nice intro music. So we're good on that. Double whammed on that one. So we're good. John also comes in with, I hope they play with a lot more urgency for the rest of the season. Playing conservative like they have against the Niners and Rams isn't going to cut it against good teams. Let it rip.
I agree with them on 4th down. I really do want to see them be more aggressive on 1st down. Even if, like I said earlier, you don't trust the running game. When are you going to, unless you give them opportunities to succeed in those situations? And also, this would make you happy. Do some boots. I don't scheme something up. We see other teams do it all the time, where they just scheme a guy completely wide open on a 3rd and short or 4th and short. I'd like to see Mike Macdonald get more aggressive there.
We've got 3 guns deep. He goes, at Mike Macdonald's press conference today, someone asked him about K9's contract, and his answer was, I'm worried about Tennessee. I'm not worried about that. I
didn't see it. I'd be interested to know how the question was worded. Yeah. The old reporter in me would think that that's a really almost irresponsible question to ask at this point in the season. That's something you ask players in training camp. I remember we asked Reek Woolen about that. Is that something that's on your mind? That's not something you ask in week 11 to the head coach. He does not and never will give a shit about a player's contractual situation this late in the season.
So we've got, I'd rather be flying an X-Wing. To you, Dan, can Sharbs turn into a fullback next season? There was a lot of discussion in the chat after you made your comment about what you think could potentially happen with Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah.
So I'll let you handle this one here, Dan.
And by the way, my apologies, X-Wing. I know you asked me this on Twitter the other day. I didn't get back to you. I just don't. Why try to make somebody into something when you already have one on your roster that has even more upside? Right. Like Zach Charbonnet is not going to be 275 pounds like Robbie Utes, and he just doesn't have those instincts. And I think Zach Charbonnet's value is going to be more to you as an offense and an organization, either as a running back that you find the right role for that can give you value as a ball carrier, or draft pick compensation if you trade him. I just don't see the upside there when you already have a guy on your roster that can be even better.
And we got Seahawks fan in here. I'm surprised to hear you guys say you don't think Charbonnet is on the team next year. I think he's a better fit than K9. He just needs better run blocking.
I respect that opinion, and I love Zach Charbonnet. We've heard Mike Macdonald rave about his work ethic, and he's everything that you want in a player, and Clint Kubiak has too. I just think if the run blocking has to be perfect for him to succeed, then he's not the right back for this offense, right? In the wide zone scheme, it's not going to be completely blocked up with massive lanes, obvious lanes, and big holes all the time. You have to be willing to get dirty and just kind of be able to commit to a messy situation and make something out of it. But you also have to have the burst to when you make a decision, you make the cut to make something out of it. And going all the way back to week 2 last year, when K9 was hurt and Zach Charbonnet led the way against New England, I remember how painful it was watching that game. They kept handing him the ball deep in the backfield. And I know his straight line speed is fine. When you look at his height, weight proportions, everything, his combine numbers looks good on a stopwatch. It takes him 2, if not 3 or 4 steps to get up to full speed. His first step is slow, and he just can't. He just doesn't have enough juice, in my opinion, to be a lead back. He just doesn't. And I don't think you can find that or gain that at this point in your career.
So what's kind of interesting is I've gone and pulled up some percentages and stuff on what Seattle's doing. And just to kind of lead into this a little bit, what Seattle's done over the last 3 weeks since coming out of the bye is Charbonnet is getting a massive percentage boost in inside zone. 42% of the time, Charbonnet is getting an inside zone carry. To Ken Walker's 26. So if this team is an outside zone and wide team, when you look at the flip of that, Kenneth Walker has got 46% of the outside zone carries now. And,
Which,
to
again,
a point
I think that gives away a tendency. And that's
it
kind
does.
of what bothers me about the carry share. If those guys had similar percentages, rotate them all you want because teams aren't going to know what we're doing. But I think when we drafted Charbonnet, his value and the strengths of his game were really good in pass protection, which isn't always the case for running backs coming out of college, familiar with the zone scheme, but also an outstanding pass catcher and a guy that could make some things happen out in space if you gave him a little bit of a running start. They're not using him that way. And so we're not getting the best value out of him. Love how hard he runs. I really do. But if you're giving away your tendencies like they are, I think it's a disadvantage to run a timeshare.
And this is the other thing. I know there was an argument earlier on in the year about, hey, Charbonnet's running into more stacked boxes than Kenneth Walker. Over the last 3 weeks, they had the equal amount of stacked box rushes, 21 and 21.
Yeah.
So that kind of tells you that it doesn't really matter who's getting it. It's just what are you doing with your opportunities? And, the stack box percentage of rushing attempts against that, Charbonnet and Ken are pretty much equal. So
I hope people aren't thinking that I'm crapping on Zach Charbonnet.
No,
I just think in a gap zone or in a gap power scheme with a good offensive line, he could be 1,000-yard rusher. We saw that in Arizona last year when Ryan Grubb really changed up the running scheme that week, and he had all those pin and pull runs. Remember that? And he had LeMaya pulling, and even Abe Lucas was getting out in front, and he ran for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns, whatever. That's not what they want to do full time now, and it's not what they do best. And so I have a fit issue with Zach.
I think this is the reason why I think you'll see that what you're saying isn't out of the realm of them doing, Dan, is there will be value for a trade of Zach Charbonnet to get a mid-round pick.
Oh, yeah.
And that is something they don't have right now, right? They've traded away. They're down to 4 picks. And if John wants to recoup one, that may be, and you may not have Charbonnet or Walker on the roster next year. Because I still think if Walker doesn't light it up and go bananas down the back half stretch here, I don't think he's a guaranteed, candidate to be coming back unless he's coming back at the right price.
I just have a hunch that they're going to sign a veteran, that they're going to go out and get a guy that they have seen do it at the NFL level in a similar blocking scheme and have success. And maybe that's a Bryce Hall. Maybe they pay a little bit of money and get a guy like Bryce Hall, or maybe, as I said earlier, it's a guy like Tyler Algier. I don't think they need a Saquon Barkley for this offense to work.
No.
Right. But I think just rolling the dice on yet another rookie when, George Halani's going to get a shot. I think Jacardier Wright's going to get a shot. I'm really, really impressed by what I saw from him in training camp and preseason. And so I don't want people to forget about him. I know there's a lot of Kenny McIntosh love out there. Shout out to John McGrath, and I'd love to see it. But the fact of the matter is the guy ran a 4.6 at the combine and is coming off 2 ACLs. I don't know that he's going to be anything more than a complimentary back moving forward. I feel like if they make a change at running back this offseason, they're going to want certainty. They're going to go more for floor than they are for ceiling. And I think they'll look to the veteran market for that.
I think they'll draft somebody as well to add to that room. And I think the one that I would hope would be Jonah Coleman out of Washington. I think he is a perfect scheme fit for what they need. If you need a blend of a Charbonnet, he's been healthy through all of his college.
He's missed the last 3 weeks, hasn't he?
I don't think Coleman's missed, has he?
He didn't play the last couple of weeks. Do I know more about the Huskies than you?
You might actually at this point, which is a shocker to me.
They've been going with Muhammad.
Yeah, that's fair. And there's another guy that I do really like, but again, I think Jonah Coleman, he's been healthy most of the time he's been there, and he is your mix. He is a power runner like Sharps, but he's got a bit of that quick twitch that can get going. So,
And I think that's the ideal running back. I said that to Greg the other day. If you could take Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, stick him in a lab and combine them, I think there's your ideal back.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you there, Dan. And so let's look at this one. This is from Bokello. Thank you for the $5 donation. Am I crazy, or does Kubiak tend to run edge plays to the boundary an exceptional amount? And if so, why?
Instead of to the wide side?
I've seen that, and I think part of that, I think it's, again, I don't want to really jump down someone's throat here, but I think part of it's Bradford. Like, to run wide zone to the right, to the wide side with your guard, he has to be able to go and get out there and move. And again, it's that getting your hands on that initial player Bradford struggles with. So if it leaks on that wide side going to the wide, it blows up, and it could be really bad. Where if you're in the short side, there's a little bit less of that massive loss potential there.
You know, one of the many reasons that it's so encouraging to see that Gray Zabel dodged a bullet on Sunday, because I think we were all thinking the worst with how he reacted to that injury. That I think, let's see, he's missed 2 games. I think by the time we play the Colts at the latest, certainly by the time we play the Rams the next time, I think we're going to put our best 5 offensive linemen on the field. And Mike Macdonald said yesterday in his press conference, he said, all of the guys on injured reserve are on track to return when they're eligible. And the guy I'm thinking about is Jalen Sundell. And I think Oluwatimi has played well enough at center, which I think we all expected he would, that with a healthy Gray Zabel at left guard and Oluwatimi at center, when Jalen Sundell comes back, I think he's the right guard. And I think that's the best chance for this team to have the best offensive line they can for now. They might lack a little push up front in some short yardage situations, right? But I think pass protection and wide zone stuff, they'll be at their best, and it'll just take away the really negative plays that we get from Bradford. And that might be the best. Well, not might. I think that's the best 5 they could put on the field and give us the best chance to make a playoff run.
So to your point, Jonah Coleman has missed 1 game, and that was last week.
Okay.
He missed 1 game with a bruised knee. So that's so he's hopefully going to be back this week. So
yeah, because I was really anxious. You've been talking him up. I was anxious to watch him last week. I was disappointed he didn't play.
Yeah, they played Purdue, and they didn't really need him in that matchup, apparently. We got Charlie the Unicorn goes, Simmons might be limited, has a hamstring injury.
Yeah, I mean, he came off injured reserve last week and had a sack, played well. I think he's good to go, but they're going to keep listing him.
Yeah, let's see what else we got in here. We got, again, I apologize to some of you guys. Again, YouTube's done this weird thing in StreamYard where they're not actually giving the proper names. I don't know why it keeps doing this.
In like 3 weeks now. Yeah, I don't know what's
up. Yeah. Fro goes, Sharps has everything but twitch and instant acceleration. Yeah. And when your zone scheme is so built, it's built on basically 3 options from a running back most times in a zone run play. You have your initial target hole that you're heading to. You have the outside bounce if your lineman turns that defender inside for whatever reason. And then if they wash, you have your cutback lane. So you have basically this 3-point, and you got to have a bit of that quick twitch to get your foot in the ground and go. And that's something where I look at Charbonnet is Charbonnet's great for stretch if he knows it's completely outside the entire time or where it's initially going. His struggle is that twitch to cut back. So again, they both could be back on the roster. Who knows? Ken Walker could sign a 1-year deal and end up back in Seattle next year. We don't know. It depends on what his market is.
He could, with his injury history. That's a really interesting potential solution there. Yeah. I mean, Greg told me on Tuesday that he's got 7 games left to prove. He's playing for next contract, but I asked him specifically, like, is he changing some perceptions? Is he potentially changing some minds in that building? Because my gut feeling in training camp was that Mike Macdonald was really irritated and annoyed that he wasn't available and that he probably wasn't their type of back. He's still got a chance. I'm not so sure he's not back in 2026 now, whereas 2 months ago, I just thought it was a foregone conclusion.
I think Mike's comments around Walker this week have been very interesting because, to your point, Dan, I felt the same way you did about how irritated Mike was, and had kind of heard that he was irritated from people that I know that are connected to the team. And it seems that tune has changed a bit, and that Walker really has done a phenomenal job of proving, I think, to this staff how committed he is.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you're now seeing that, hey, we need to get him more touches. We need to do some of these things. And it's not just that, predicated because of what he's doing in practice, which Mike said is amazing. It's now translating to the game, which is what I think Mike's kind of looking for. So Amy agrees with me. She would love Coleman. I think Coleman's a perfect fit there. So we've got, what else we got in here? We got Bokello comes in. The best OCs run multiple blocking schemes in their run game. Yeah, and Seattle's done that. They do. They have a 10% of Seattle's runs this year have been power. 6% of them have been duo man, and then you've got roughly 3% have been counter runs. So Seattle's done a little bit. They just are predominantly a zone-based team with 30% inside to 35% outside.
And I would answer that by saying also the best OCs run what they're good at.
Yeah.
And if you feel like your run game personnel isn't suited as well to run gap and power, you'd be irresponsible to run a lot of that.
We got John McGrath here. He goes, Sundell at right guard makes a ton of sense. Bradford has proven again that he is a turnstile. Time to try something else.
I do want to say something about this. I think it's completely unfair, and it's happened again this week. It happened in the Arizona game, at Arizona, the Thursday night game, week 4, and it's happened again this week. It is so easy to take a couple of clips of a guy looking bad in block and running the wrong way and turning the wrong way or whatever, and put it out on Twitter and say, see, this guy's a piece of shit. And then, because then what happens is then the fan base goes, oh my God, this guy's garbage. Where we're talking about this offensive line is on pace to shatter the all-time Seahawks record for fewest sacks given up in a year. They're on pace to give up 17 sacks. Geno got sacked 50 times last year. The all-time record for fewest sacks in a season in Seahawks history is 21. And that was back in 1977 when there were only 14 games. And so Anthony Bradford's part of that. Like, this unit has worked well enough together that it's been 4th in the league in points scored and all these things. It's exceeded all of our expectations for how good this offense could be. And so, I've just stopped having these debates with people online. And John, I'm not picking on you. It's just, there's been some other people that have come after me in the last week or so, like, see, and they'll take one of these cut-ups that someone posts and say, see, he shouldn't even be on the field. He shouldn't even be in the league. He's garbage. Someone told me yesterday, anyone would be better. That is never true. And that's a very dangerous mindset. It's not true. Someone could be a lot worse. And so if there's anything this coaching staff has shown us, it's if someone it shows them that they would be better and help the team win and be more successful on the field, they're going to put them on the field. This isn't the last 3 years of the Pete Carroll regime. Guys aren't on scholarship anymore. If they felt like Bryce Cable could give them a better chance to have a dominant offense right now, he'd be playing right now. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And it's, again, John, it's not for you, man. I love you. It's for the people that do the cut-ups and put them out there. And then the fans that just watch those and go, oh, I guess he's terrible all the time. Not the case.
I will say this, and I agree with you, Dan. The one thing I'll say is it's getting more consistent of seeing.
Oh, it's bad.
Getting back. And so here's I'm going to throw out a hypothetical.
There's no question about that.
I'm going to throw out a hypothetical. Say Christian Haynes plays this weekend, which we expect him to do, and he plays extremely well. Does that now open up that gate on the other side for him and Bradford to start having a legit competition? And maybe Haynes takes that job. I know we talk about Sundell.
I completely agree with that. It's a really good point, and I'm a little disappointed that I hadn't given that more weight. Although I did earlier today, I was thinking about what we might do for our film lab next week. And one of the things that I was looking forward to is having a whole game of tape of Christian Haynes and thinking we might take a look at that. So, yeah.
I'd be down to do that.
It's an option.
John's got one other one. He goes, do you think Reese or Lindenbaugh would be a better fit for our O-line? I think Reese would. I wanted him at the trade deadline. It just didn't work out.
I think Linderbaum's a top 5 center in the entire NFL.
Oh, agreed.
And so, but I do think, from your point, the opportunity to upgrade a spot is greater with Ruiz. Linderbaum's really good, and he's still just 26 years old. But I think I have confidence that by the end of the year, we're all going to look back and go, Olu's a starter. He's a starting center, and he's a good starting center. And it's going to cost, you'll have to pay more than the Bears paid for Drew Dahlman to sign Tyler Linderbaum. And with all the other decisions that we have, he's probably not a realistic option. I do think they're going to revisit trading for Ruiz again, because you're talking 2 years at $9.5 million a year, non-guaranteed, I believe. So you could do anything with that contract you want to. I do think he'd be a better fit given our current situation. And when you take everything else into account, money and all that other stuff. And I really hope that they pursue that. I posted a 3-round mock draft earlier this week. And I did take an offensive lineman. I took a guard in the first round, but only because the board fell that way. But the wave of reaction I got to, kudos to you, because anything other than a guard in the first round is a fireable offense. Not how the draft works. But also, I don't want to throw another damn young player onto this really young offensive line. I do want them to do it with a veteran. I really do.
So this is an interesting one. I'm going to bring this up. So this is Jason James coming in. He goes, don't agree with everything Bryce says and very little with what Dan says, but I absolutely love this collaboration. Great work, boys. Keep it going. I appreciate that, because I don't want bobblehead fans, I guess is the way I look at it.
Yeah, we don't want what's that called?
I always like
echo
Jason's. Yeah, it was a little bit of an echo chamber. I always like what Jason brings in the comments and everything, because he will always challenge and have a different perspective. And so I think that's absolutely awesome. So what else do we got in here? I'm just looking through. Oh, here we go. Charlie Unicorn. Do you think OC Kubiak has done enough to warrant a no? He has not. I will say this right now. The 49ers and the Ram games are two things that I think stand out like sore thumbs right now for him. I also he doesn't have enough of a sample size in my perspective. And some people say, well, he had the Minnesota gig. Yeah, he had the Minnesota gig for a year. He had the Saints gig for a year. He's never run it back again. And you got to remember, when you're hiring these guys to be head coaches, it's with the outlook of how many years have they done something consistently in a row, because that is what you're trying to buy in an extent of. Like, if you look at Mike Macdonald, he had consistently built a defense over 2 seasons, taking them from a horrible unit to the top of the NFL. So John Schneider could look at it and be like, yeah, I can see how he did that and how that worked out. With Clint Kubiak, you can't really do that because he's never run it back with the same group of individuals. And when you're a head coach, you don't get to turn over your entire roster every year, where when you move from one head coaching job to another team, you get an influx of it and a turnover. Like, you think he's got one player right now currently on that offense from that Saints team in Rashid Shaheed. So you have to be able to sustain your foundation as a coach. And again, watching his press conference yesterday, I think it was, or was it today? No, it was yesterday. Yeah. And just even how he answered some of the questions that were thrown, which I thought were good questions from Brady Henderson, from Greg Bell. He doesn't give much at all. And Mike's even gotten better as a head coach. And I think Mike, even at his floor last year, was still better than where Kubiak is now.
Yeah. A couple of things just to piggyback on that. You and I have talked for months about how I think a big part of the process in hiring that offensive staff this offseason was that they want some stability, and that by bringing in not only Clint Kubiak, but John Benton and Rick Dennison and Justin Outen and Andrew Janoko and those guys he's familiar with him, it was kind of a collaborative effort. And it was with the idea that I don't want to be one and done every single year. I don't want to keep churning through play callers. So he was looking for someone that wanted a little stability. His dad had to wait his turn, and he was much, much older when he got his first head coaching gig. But to your point, and I've been saying this for a long time, ever since I heard him speak for the first time, to be honest, to put this as succinctly as I can, he would have to have multiple years of showing that he is an elite play caller and coordinator in order to overcome significant shortcomings when it comes to charisma. That It's important. Those things are important to a GM and to an owner in how your head coach that you're going to hand $8 million a year to and parade out in front of your fans as the savior to turn around an ailing franchise. That guy needs to be able to rally people and pump them up. He is maybe the driest interview I've ever seen in all my years of covering football, going back decades. That's not hyperbole. I'm not exaggerating about that. And so I'm not saying he can't ever be a head coach. Certainly with that last name, you've got a shot. And he's incredibly smart and he's devoted to the game. He's lived in it his entire life, but he's going to have to put minimum 2 years in Seattle together, maybe 3, of a top 5 type offense and really elevate Sam Darnold to the next level and stay there in order to overcome those shortcomings because they're significant.
And this is my comp for Clint Kubiak and his coaching trajectory if he were to become a head coach. It's very similar to Brian Schottenheimer. Right?
Schottenheimer had way more personality than Clint.
Way more personality, but it took him a long time to finally get the current job that he has in Dallas as the head coach, which a lot of people they figured was a mercy hire this offseason. But dad with NFL head coaching pedigree, well-respected coach, and Marty Schottenheimer. It took Brian a really long time of offense, developing quarterbacks, doing it over and over before he really got an opportunity at it.
Darrell Bevell's another one. I mean, he came from the Holmgren coaching tree. He coached Brett Favre, and he worked his way up, and he had some great offenses. He had a Super Bowl offense. Still couldn't get hired as head coach despite multiple interviews because he didn't interview well, and he didn't have charisma. And again, he looked like Sean McVay charisma-wise compared to Clint Kubiak.
Agreed. We've got Ian Victor, the other moderator of the Hawkseye chat. He goes, I feel this offseason will be very interesting overall. I say free agency and a big trade will happen. Also, have to take care of business from here on out. I definitely believe there will be a big trade that happens for the Seattle Seahawks this offseason.
So you saw some more of those reports this week, right? Coming out of, you and I talked a lot around the trade deadline. You had a lot of intel that, and Greg confirmed it for me on Tuesday. The Max Crosby talks happened. They were real, and they may have gone up almost right to the deadline. But the Raiders front office, coaching staff, organization, ownership just wasn't sure which direction they wanted to go. Do we hang on to Pete, try to add some veterans, spend a bunch of money in free agency, and try to win now again like we did last offseason, or do we tear it all down and do a rebuild? It sounds now like that front office is aligned and that they're leaning rebuild. And if that is the case, then I think they would be negligent in not trading Geno Smith or cutting him if you can't trade him and not trading Max Crosby because he would give you the best chance to maximize your return and get draft pick compensation back and maybe a couple of players that can help you too. Because what good does an all-pro, Pro Bowl type edge player do you if you're going to spend 2-3 years picking in the top 5? I think they're going to revisit that.
Yeah, I have heard from, sources that are connected to the Seahawks that they will re-engage the Raiders come the offseason about
Once
this.
John Schneider decides he wants a guy.
Oh, yeah. And I think part of it, too, is I think they were so close from what I heard this trade deadline that they figure it's something could happen. And it's something that Mike Macdonald wants. He wants an elite pass rusher.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is he views it as the missing piece of his defense.
Yeah.
Because he looks at it and goes, I can have this great rotation, which we currently have. But you saw it in the Rams game. They were able to create pressure and not get home.
Yeah.
And what he looks at is I can put an elite pass rusher in that with that rotation, and that rotation can create the pressure, but I can bank on that elite pass rusher getting home once or twice in a game just because they are that type of player. And then you go and you kind of listen to Chip Kelly in his interview today, or was it today or yesterday? I think I might have sent it to you, Dan.
Yep.
And basically comes out and says, hey, we've got Myles Garrett this weekend, but Max, he can try and emulate what Myles does, but Myles is just totally different. And I'm sitting there going, if I'm talking top elite pass rushers in the NFL, yes, Myles Garrett is probably the number one guy, but Max Crosby is not far off from that. So to say that he can't really give you the look you're looking for to emulate Miles, that's just a horrible take.
Open foot or open mouth, insert foot. Like what you say there, and maybe he meant to, and he's kind of an awkward conversationalist, is what he should have said is, hey, if there's, Myles Garrett is one of the best of all time, but we might be in the best position of anyone in the league to prepare for him during the week because we have Max Crosby and he can give us the looks we need to get ready for Myles Garrett. I'll say this about that situation too. If they do indeed choose to move forward with the rebuild, which would start with either firing Pete, or I think Pete would step away. If they decide to do that, he'd probably just retire. And I hope that's what he does. Then I think Max Crosby asks for a trade. I really do. I think he would at that point. I don't think he wants to be part of in his prime years, I don't think he wants to be part of another rebuild.
I think the biggest thing, and you listen to Raiders fans talk about it, well, Max keeps saying he's a Raider for life and he's this and he's that. And I completely appreciate that. But I think there's also a precedent that's been set ahead of him by JJ Watt of I stuck around Houston way too long. And I couldn't eventually. I tried to go to the Arizona and tried to, potentially with some of that go and push to see if we could. Well, it didn't work out. Yeah. Don't waste that opportunity. Go, there's very few Michael Strahan situations where you stayed with one team your entire career and were able to get to a Super Bowl finally and win it. I think now guys are understanding, like, if they're not going to have an organization that's going to be able to give them that opportunity, they need to go find one for themselves. And, it'll be interesting. Back to the Clint Kubiak one here. We got Bokello comes back in. Clint's dad, Gary, stayed as an OC with elite coaches for many years before he became a head coach. I think Clint will follow a similar path. I agree.
And also, you want to be in a position where there's a really good opportunity. I mean, Ben Johnson's a good example of that. We all thought he was going to go 2 years ago. He didn't like the jobs that were open and how they lined up with his ability to either get or inherit a young quarterback that he believed in. But then the Bears opportunity was one that he saw as a fit. If you're Clint Kubiak and you're looking at this quarterback class, right, where the best guys at the top of the class are guys that haven't played very much, which just makes the range of outcomes even more volatile than it already usually is, and why the bust rate is so high on young quarterbacks. And you look at the teams that are looking for coaches or are going to fire their coaches, they're not close at all. They're not a couple of good free agent signings and a good draft away from winning. And oh, by the way, everyone is saying that this draft might be fairly deep, and I think a little better than some people are giving it for and beating it up, but it's not an elite draft. It's not a great draft. So why not have a second good season, right? Clint Kubiak's a very intellectual guy. He's going to look at the whole picture. Why not spend 2 years here, prove yourself for 2 years? You've got a great situation because your defense is going to only give up 12, 13, 14 points a game, and you've got a good quarterback in place and a young roster and all those things. And then you look ahead to that 2027 class, which not just from a quarterback perspective, but it looks like it might be one of the elite classes we've seen in a long time. Wouldn't you want to wait for an opportunity then when you can maybe turn around a franchise a little quicker?
Totally agree.
John.
Exactly. John comes in. He goes, if JS circles back to the Raiders and tries to get Crosby again, what more could he offer that could make them trade him?
That's the tough part.
It's your first rounders.
Yeah, but there is an argument to be made that what everyone is reporting, and you yourself, but it was corroborated by a bunch of other reports, as the best package that we offered him this offseason included Riq Woolen and Boye Mafe and our next 2 first rounders. Well, if now you get into the offseason, those guys are free agents. You don't have them to offer anymore. You don't want to offer any of your core players, right? Because you're making those decisions in the offseason. The players that you don't feel you want to stick around, you're going to let depart in free agency. And now you're leading your trade offer with a draft pick at the end of the first round in a weak draft. That's going to be the tough part. And that'll, I trust John to figure that out. It might mean having to give up something of a little more value. I'll tell you this. The Raiders need a quarterback, but they also need to rebuild that offensive line. And, laugh at me all you want, but you might be able to offer Christian Haynes. You might be able to offer One of the young tackle, they might like a Mason Richmond because they scouted him last year. They might like a Bryce Cable do. They might like an Anthony Bradford, depending on what kind of scheme they're going to run. He's got 1 year left on his rookie contract. He's cheap. There's other little pieces you could throw in there, but you might have to go a little deeper. You might have to offer like multiple 27 picks because that's viewed as a better draft.
Two other names I could throw into that, depending on how the rest of their season goes and if Seattle signs them and keeps them around. What about Drake Thomas or Josh Jobe?
Well, but Josh Jobe's on an expiring contract too. Are you going to sign
That's
him?
what I'm saying, but you would sign him and then
trade him?
Trade him.
When do we ever see that in the NFL? Like, that's an NBA.
You see it on occasion. I'm just saying that's an opportunity where you sign him and then say this trade doesn't happen at the beginning of the offseason. You sign him. It goes closer to a training camp kind of, or the draft. You've already signed your player.
Now,
linebacker's
an interesting point on your part. I would throw Tyrese Knight's name out there too. Like, Drake Thomas is playing so well. Knight's going to be in the third year of a rookie contract. It's going to be dirt cheap. He might be a guy that they really like because their linebackers stink down there right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that could be an interesting one as well.
What else do we got before we turn in for the night here, Dan? Because I know it's getting late for you down there. Let's see. Oh, Brian Myers comes in with an interesting. How long does Crosby have at this level? I think he's got at least 3 or 4 years left at being elite.
He's 28. And we've seen that position age well. Like the elite pass rushers play into their mid-30s. Myles Garrett's on the other side of 30. Bradley Chubb is now too, although he's had a bunch of injuries. Von Miller's still playing at the age of 35, 36, although he's a role player now. But he had some really good years after the age of 30. I think he plays. I think the rest, I'd feel comfortable with that contract that you're going to get really good value out of him for the rest of it. Takes really good care of his body, plays with an incredibly high motor. He's never going to take plays off. I think you're getting his prime and you're getting it on a pretty reasonable deal, to be honest.
All right, Dan. Well, let's talk about this, the final words. So let's get in our predictions for this game. I'll go with you first. What do you have as a prediction for this game? Final score.
Oh, I struggle with picking scores. So give me some latitude here. I think they win by 3 scores. I think it's kind of the perfect storm of, as I hope we've pointed out here over the last hour and a half, just a really bad matchup for the Tennessee Titans. There's bad rosters and good rosters, but sometimes your strengths might just match up in such a way to take advantage of some of their weaknesses. I think it's just a bad matchup for them this week. But also the Seahawks are pissed off and they have a lot they want to prove. And they're not going to take this game lightly at all. They're not going to be like, it's just the Titans, right? Even like, let's take left guard, for example. Gray Zabel, I don't think he's going to play on Sunday. So you can look at it and say, ooh, they're going to take advantage of that. Christian Haynes has something to prove. He has a lot to prove. He was a 3rd-round draft pick last year that people are calling a wasted pick. He's out there battling for a job. And just like you said so astutely just a few minutes ago, that he might not just be battling for his future with the Seahawks, but hey, if I play well this week, I might be able to take over right guard and get back into that battle as well. So I just think, I think it's a 3-score. And by 3 scores, I mean, I'd lean more towards 3 touchdowns. I think it's going to be a pretty easy win. I will predict this. We're going to see Drew Lock in this game.
All right. So I'm going to go with a score prediction. I think it's going to be 31-10 Seattle.
Okay.
And I think it's 31-3 for the majority of this game. I think Seattle gets up and they just kind of go. I'm in the same sentiment. I think we see Drew Lock. I think we see a lot of George Halani in that 4th quarter to a bit. I will say this. And here's my hot prediction.
How about a sack for Connor O'Toole?
Sure, I'll give you that one.
Okay.
I'm going to say this. I predict 22 touches of the football for Kenneth Walker and over 130 all-purpose yards and a touchdown.
Boy, that'd be nice to see, wouldn't it? That would really give this running game a lot of confidence, give him a lot of confidence, and I think send a message to other teams too. I think when you're a defensive coordinator and you're planning to face this offense the way it's been over the first 10 weeks, I think you take deep breath when Zach Charbonnet's in the game. Like, okay, yeah, play him as much as Ken Walker, because we don't worry about him hitting a home run.
Fair.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, what do you got upcoming on Seahawks Forever and NorthwestForever.com?
Well, let me just say this to start with. I don't know. So a bit of an announcement to make. I've got tickets available for the game on Sunday in Nashville. They're Upper Bowl. And I put it out there to my members. Haven't heard anything back yet. They only cost me like $48 for 2 of them. I'll give them away to the first person that reaches out to me. Best way is probably on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. You can DM me. I'm not going to be able to make it to Nashville. I've got a family situation I got to deal with. And so I'm getting on a flight tomorrow to go back to Seattle. I don't even know if I'll be able to react to the game afterwards on Sunday. And so I won't be away for long. I mean, I got to work. I do this full time. And I'll be taking my laptop and a mic with me and doing what I need to do. But I just can't right now. I just can't commit to anything other than as you plugged earlier, and I appreciate you doing it. The best way to find all my content is nwforever.com. That'll take you to the Patreon, and that's where everything lives under one roof. All my videos, all of my audio podcasts, my Substack writing, and even Mariners Forever. Although I had a little hiccup on YouTube right now, some things are still populating. It disappeared there for a minute, but that'll be back. And I just started this week writing for Seahawks on SI, so you can see my short form reactionary content on a daily basis there as well.
All right. And so over here on the Hawks side, I will have a live instant reaction show following the Seahawks game at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So it'll be probably around 12:30, 1 o'clock. I'll do our, wind up to the game quickly. And then Monday, I will have Seahawks Aftermath with Michael Thompson. This time he won't be traveling and shooting it from his hotel lobby, which I'm almost tempted to put the photo up on the YouTube page. He had a garbage can with a caution wet sign and then a water bottle propped up with his phone. Yeah. And that's how he did it. I will send you the photo, Dan, so you can have a look. That is how committed he was to doing the show. So with all that being said, let's hope our Seahawks go out there, reset, get their opportunity to beat up on a team that, hopefully doesn't fight back much. And we get to kind of cruise control through this game and get ready for our next matchup and get back on the right track for things. But outside of that,
thanks, Bryce.